Okay, I'm getting the high sign. Hello and welcome, and thank you all for coming. So good to see your bright faces. Um, I guess I just right off the bat have to confess something I've never done in 5 years here with these programs. Um, we've switched the topic. If you came because of urinary incontinence, you'll be you won't be disappointed because you're going to like what we're doing instead. But many will be relieved, no pun intended, that it's not urinary incontinence. And then I imagine some people have stayed away because it was urinary incontinence. So I'm sorry about that. And it's all my fault. You know, as you know, the resident physicians who work with me here give this presentation. And yesterday I said, so your presentation's ready? What presentation? Now, I want to tell you as sincerely as I know how to, you'll choose whether you believe me or not, but I sent them an email. Just because I can't find that email now doesn't mean I didn't send it. I know I sent it. In fact, I suspect when you're dealing with younger people that they could have hacked my computer somehow. Who knows? Who knows what happened? But anyway, I finally showed mercy and said, I guess 1 day's notice is not sufficient. And I thought, but you know, I've got something else if I can pull the right person here that would be a good thing to share with you guys. And so we've changed the topic, and I think it's one you'll find very interesting. You've heard me say, and I hope you share my sentiment that our being here from UAMS, running the clinic, seeing people in HCC and anywhere on the campus, represents a partnership between UAMS and Butterfield Trail Village, which I think has just huge potential, and I think it should be a win-win thing for both organizations. I hope it is, and I hope it grows to be more and more so with time. Among the things that it has the ability to do is to bring other services to Butterfield Trail. And I think most of us share an agreement. If you can get it here and not have to go off campus, why not? Just to reinforce the point I'm building up to, this summer I will have been in Northwest Arkansas practicing community-based medicine and geriatrics for 44 years. So I'm celebrating. This is thank you. Did I set them up sufficiently for that, for the applause? So for 44 years I've been here, and for 44 years I thought, what we need to serve older adults well is a certified, formally trained geriatric psychiatrist. In my training in geriatrics, I came to appreciate the difference. In my practice, now Dr. Rubinow is a practicing general psychiatrist. He's the exception to the rule I'm going to say. Most general psychiatrists treat older adults the same conscientious way they treat younger adults and middle-aged adults, but that often is too big a doses and too many medications, and I think we've talked enough in here about the danger of polypharmacy, multiple medications, and the increased side effect likelihood with age. Well, anyway, after 44 years of dreaming, praying, hoping for a geriatric psychiatrist, lo and behold, among the other good things that UAMS is doing in mental health, which I should have led with really, they have recruited a formally trained geriatric psychiatrist. We had one go at him 2 or 3 years ago, and I got to know him, and he chose to stay on the East Coast, but now he's come back home to Arkansas. He's a native Arkansan. So Dr. Matt Kern, and guess what? he wants to come to Butterfield Trail. So starting off once a month, one half day a month, he's here in our clinic seeing people, and he wants to be busy. And if he got busy, he'd love to be here 4 days a month. But anyway, I just think it's a red letter day. It was part of what UAMS Psychiatric Services has been up to in spreading great mental health care around the state. And it has, for the benefit of Northwest Arkansas, planted a clinic operation called PRI, Psychiatric Research Institute, right here. Dr. Robinow, who I'm going to introduce, is the director of it. So he's going to tell us about that and tell us about Dr. Kern, and then entertain questions about mental health. Maybe it's a little ironic. We were scheduled to have urinary incontinence, which is a big problem. A lot of people. This is probably one that's even more epidemic than urinary incontinence. Is mental health as we age, and you all know why. You're the savvy ones. You really know why. We live in such a stressful society. And this was before the pandemic. A stressful society, and nobody gets out of it without periodic depression or anxiety or something that affects our mental health. And good mental health care is so effective. So PRI getting established here that Dr. Rubinow can tell us about was a great thing, and I just want to endorse it even more because it's now generated Dr. Kern being here as well. So what I want to tell you about Dr. Rubinow, he's been in and out of Northwest Arkansas for 20 years, I'm guessing. 20? 15? 15 years. His last try at going back to Little Rock didn't work. He missed us so much. He came back, and he really, I'm sure, got pressed back because everybody in the system recognizes his leadership ability. I mostly recognize his sense of humor. It's a good thing in a psychiatrist, don't you think? But here's something I want to tell you that he won't bring up, but impressed me. And it was about the time I started coming out here. It was 4 or 5 years ago. Every year, UAMS, statewide, starting with Little Rock, the mothership, and statewide, chooses by vote of the peers the outstanding physician in the whole system. I don't know that it's ever been a psychiatrist until John Rubinow, but 4 or 5 years ago, he was now, how many surgeons are gnashing their teeth when a psychiatrist gets named best physician? I don't know. But anyway, very proud of him for that, and I want to endorse that. I think he was very worthy of that distinction. But he was very kind to, on very short notice, come and just share with us what PRI is, what it's doing, and just talk about mental health generally. Because I think, again, you're the savvy, wise crew. You guys know what's going on, and where the issues are and where the problems are, and he can tell us how they address them. Fair enough? John Rubinow, the distinguished John Rubinow.
That's right. And we all know distinguished means old. And now let me start correcting all the things you said. We do have a program up here. UAMS has a program. We had a program many years ago, and it was all inpatient based, and that was closed for a few years. And I was the only one to survive that. Went to Little Rock for a while, and now we're back. But the issue is the community's been clamoring for psychiatric care for so long that we're promised out to the university, to another program in the university, to Children's Hospital, to I can't even think of all the things that we've just got little pieces of. So it looks like on the calendar, it looks like a much smaller clinic than we have. But we are here. We plan to continue to grow. And we're looking at full spectrum services to look like what Little Rock has. This community has the need for that, and hopefully UAMS can fill that. So I did get the email, so that's one correction. I got it yesterday. And it was basically, hey, what are you doing at 2? So I'm here for you. I have verbal incontinence, so I think that's about the same as urinary incontinence. We can just talk and talk, but I don't know if it's good to have a little structure or if you want to just play total stump the chump, whatever you want to do. But if there are questions about mental health or how we operate now, or just kind of general questions, I can entertain them. Whether or not they will be satisfied and it will win some kind of an award, that's questionable. Oh, and one other thing. In June, I will be 40 years as a physician. So, all right. Is it comfortable for people to ask questions, or would you rather? Okay. Yes. Yo, my lovely assistant, or actually Dr. Wright, will bring a microphone to you.
I was surprised when I moved here how constant infirmity and death and dying would affect me. I find it depressing. So I have to just get away. We go sit in the city parks and watch children run and play and whatever. So I don't know if I'm the only one who's, now it doesn't bother Mort. So I may be the only one.
Well,
but how do you
I think you're
address that?
describing something normal, and I think you're describing some healthy ways to cope with it. Some people feel more than others, and I believe if you look at information about grief, there's a higher incidence of females, having prolonged or complicated grief. And I can't explain all of that. I'm not an expert in that. But I think we each have our different ways of experiencing it. But it is not uncommon when, you're trying to kind of live this linear life and there are all these little things that happen that kind of drop you out for a while. And getting out in nature, regardless of what the mental health, issue is, nature is a great reframe. It doesn't matter the time of year. It's, it's the combination of natural light and greenery and just change of scene. But something else happens a lot of times when we're outside, which is we go with somebody and we have that conversation and that socialization. So you're talking about a very healthy coping mechanism. I hate to break it to you, but you're doing something good. I think if there was a goal of grieving, it would be to be able to carry on, to get life back on track. And so thinking about it that way, what are the things I can do to try to keep my life the same as much as possible so that it doesn't drag me down further or whatever. And you're doing those things. What I would add to that, these really simple things that it doesn't matter what kind of a, mental concern you're suffering from. Typically, the other things that help us is being on a routine, eating at regular times, sleeping at regular times, and a lot of times as we age, our sleep patterns change too, and our eating needs change, and the amount of protein versus carbohydrate and all of that changes, but still finding a routine and sticking to that is good. And having accountability, so putting something in your calendar, yes, I will meet you Tuesday and we will do this or do that. So nature, socialization, greenery, natural sunlight, having a pattern, all those kinds of things are generally good. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think that's great, because what I remember having gone through widowhood some years ago is how disorienting it was. And you lose all your routine, it seems like. And so reestablishing a routine and a new norm is It's a process that doesn't happen in a week, but it's important.
And it's never the same. The routine is not the same routine without, a very important element of the routine, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about grief more, or it's nice to be right. Did somebody say that? I think that another thing that's a high level response to grief in some ways is humor, which sounds wrong at first, but finding a way to continue to have some humor, some lightening of the mood as you can is important. And I think that we all know that in our own families. I mean, I don't think I'm the only one to experience, when there's a loss in my family, what you remember is that individual's like something they said or did, and just remembering them in an affectionate way that makes you laugh. I experienced it with a friend whose family was in town for the first time. Some of them were in town for the first time, and they were remembering their father, and very funny stories. But it was just finding a way to make things a little bit lighter.
I'm sure it's partly the same reason that support groups help.
Yes.
But just sharing your experience. So when I've had the experience of just sharing the experience of grief and widowhood, people often will tell me things that I experienced too, like, for months, I mean, even like 6 months, something would come up and I would say, I can't remember. I'm going to have to wait and ask Jen, wait and ask Jen later. And then you look around kind of like, hope nobody heard that. It's so bizarre.
Well, it's not in that we've developed those routines, and our brains just can't manage that quick change. It's a huge change in our life, and we're being asked to deal with it immediately. Would you want to be that person who could manage that immediately? I mean, I'm not sure I would, because it feels like you need that time to understand how they fit in your life and how you can move on. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Well, sleep on the job.
There's a lot of discussion going on about medical treatment for dementia and Alzheimer. Do you have any idea, is there really a possibility to hold dementia and Alzheimer back? Or is it all what they like to do, but how much experience do we have with that medication yet?
I'm going to be very careful in my answer. The difference between reading about what researchers are looking at and the difference about what I can, scribble on a pad and get for you can be really big. And I do not treat dementia at this point in my career, but I think that the treatment for dementia is early identification, finding social and medical manipulations you can make, refining treatment of other conditions, reducing the risk of some things or others, and really trying to identify ahead of time and be able to monitor and put things into place is one of the large elements of it. The medications we have that slow dementia, and you check me on this, a lot of times are very temporary. This is how I understand it. And that's part of the reason why it's a big decision. When do you give it? Because if it's going to, slow things down for a little while and then you've shot your shot, when do you want to do that? Early or later to preserve something? To me, that's a difficult decision.
Yeah, the only medicine that we've had that's been around very long and that you feel really comfortable with because you've seen it in a lot of people, how it works, it's the Aricept group of medicines. There are about 3 or 4 of them called cholinesterase inhibitors. The thing to know about them is they don't reverse anything, but they do, in the majority of people, slow it down even for a few years. And we've tested and retested people in a way that seen when they can take that medicine often they may go 3 years without any progression, which is unheard of with Alzheimer's. Ordinarily, year to year, you have noticeable change. There are a couple of medicines that are pretty close to, one of them has been approved, but it's the one that, the committee almost broke up over because there was different opinions about, how useful it was, and of course it's incredibly expensive. Then the one that hasn't quite gone on the market yet carries a little more promise in everything I've read. I can't remember the names of them, I'm sorry. So we may have something else to try. But, the other part of it, if it's not going to be affordable, it's going to be almost punitive. How had a medicine the other day, it wasn't a dementia medicine the other day that we checked into. This individual says, I can afford it, I'll do it. Checked into it, it's $15,000 a month. $15,000 a month. You buy a house, So
I'm not sure I can come up with an excellent definition of dementia, but what it is to me is it's losing executive function largely. It's not the only time that people lose executive function. There are other illnesses where they can, but that's what happens. So organizing oneself, being able to remember and even recognize that they don't remember, being able to manage money, a calendar, driving, complex tasks, all of those kinds of things that have to do with our human level cognitive executive function.
And one of the criteria for it to actually reach dementia level diagnosis is, in addition to memory problems that can be observed, it also interferes with your daily activities. If it doesn't interfere with your overall function, it's not to the level of dementia. It may be heading that way or not, but it's not that it's not real, that you're not forgetting some things, but if it doesn't interfere with everyday function and activity, it's not to the point of dementia.
Yeah, and that's almost universally true, as I can think of it for psychiatry. If the functional impairment is there, that's when it really matters. Yeah. Because we're looking at when do you intervene. You don't intervene just because. You intervene if you can make a difference. Uh-oh.
So I'd like you to describe the structure of the mental health system from UAMS that's here in Northwest Arkansas. I mean, where the different components are located,
Okay.
And what are the different divisions?
All right, may I sing it to you? We have a campus here near Washington Regional, and in that office we have a clinic director and myself, medical director, and we have 3 more psychiatrists. There's Dr. Kern, Dr. McMahon, and Dr. Mooney. Dr. Kern has some special interest and training in geriatric psychiatry. Dr. Mooney is, like me, a general psychiatrist with a number of years' experience and has been very well liked. Dr. McMahon is newer to us. She was trained in North Carolina, and she likes the young population. So as far as assignments go, plus we have 3 therapists right now, and we're looking to expand to 6. And before I forget, given an opportunity, I will sing the praises of psychotherapy. Even though I make my living diagnosing and prescribing, I believe in psychotherapy wholeheartedly. So let's see, I can start with myself best. I work with Wellness, which is an internal program for residents and students at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, UAMS, here in Northwest Arkansas. So it's the medical school, the medical residents, internal medicine family. And then the PT, OT, nursing program. There's a radiology program now too, and if they add any other programs, they'll be part of it. Dr. McMahon has a hand in that too, and then my week is spent, today was AR Connect, which is a statewide program for urgent care, but it's very brief. It started during the pandemic when people couldn't reach their mental health providers, and we gave them just really quick, get them back on their feet and refer them out. I also work for the Crisis Stabilization Unit, which is now only in Little Rock. We had 2 locations, but they do the same thing, only we have overnight beds, and it plays to an audience that's largely substance involved. And we quickly get people in, get them stabilized, and get them to rehab or get them to a shelter, whatever it is they need to get them meds and get them back out. I love those programs, low threshold, quick, back to your life. Then I'm with the University of Arkansas athletes, and I can't remember what else I do. And then, let's see, Dr. Mooney is mostly in the clinic, but half of his day is spent over at Washington Regional doing consults, and he trains residents, he trains medical students, and he does train residents, internal medicine, I think. Dr. Kern works part-time at Washington Regional and then has a clinic. Dr. McMahon works at the University of Arkansas for the CAPS program. That's her major time. And then Dr. Mooney and Dr. McMahon have a specialized ketamine treatment program called, it's Spravato is the brand name, where we treat depression and some other conditions through a somatic, it's a medication, but it's given by nasal spray and it needs to be observed, and so it's a little more involved treatment. So that's what the doctors do. The therapists have a general practice. I think when I started training, I had no idea how much trauma there is in this world. No idea. Everybody at our place has some experience in treating trauma. And then there's the depression, anxiety, the other mood disorders, bipolar and stuff that we treat. We have not had a really active geriatric service, and we have not had child psychiatry, but we are getting a child psychiatrist. And he will be promised in part to children's and then be with us a little bit. So the clinic looks like we have a lot of action there, but the action happens outside the clinic. Really, I answered it? Okay, slightly earlier raise, but you will be next. It's my prediction.
Back to dementia and Alzheimer's. What is the difference? Does one lead to the other, or not necessarily so? And I had a third question, but basically, what is really the difference, and how do you diagnose the difference, and what concerns should people have when one is diagnosed and the other isn't?
Depression and dementia, did you say, or?
Alzheimer's.
Oh, Alzheimer's is a subtype of dementia. So dementia is like facial tissue, and you can either have Puffs or Kleenex or Scott. And so Alzheimer's, it's in the olden times, conditions were named after physicians who described them. And so that description came along, and it represents the largest category. I'm always going to look to you to make sure that I didn't
So there are 3 or 4 types of dementia that are fairly common. Alzheimer's being the most common, vascular dementia where there have been small strokes and circulation problems that cause it. Then there's frontal temporal dementia. But Alzheimer's is far and away the most common one. But they're all under the umbrella of dementia.
Yeah, and some of those, the reason why it's important to know subtypes sometimes is that's where you can do some of those interventions medically. If you know there's a family history in particular, the vascular is the one that I think of first, that, figuring out we need to prevent this from getting any worse. I thought you asked about depression, because depression or anxiety can masquerade. For young people, they come in and tell me, I have attention deficit disorder. I know I have it. And if you get testing, sometimes it's depression or it's anxiety. And we are just like a fancy computer. If you're asking us to do too many calculations at the same time and keep track of the grocery list, forget it. And for older people, like my age, I'm laughing only because it is very convincing at times. No, I totally forgot. Something's wrong. But we just get busy, and sometimes mood can interfere that way too. So,
In fact, this is such a strong and fairly prevalent thing that there's a term that's been reserved for depression that looks like dementia, pseudo-dementia. It's not really dementia, but you can't remember very well when you're real depressed. But especially older adults, we're all subject to that.
yeah, and assume it's dementia. And when I did work in Little Rock, as hard as it was to be away from here, I worked down the hall from a neuropsychologist, and they would do testing, and I had a series of people that did not have dementia but were convinced they had it. And so,
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I want to say to you, what I get asked all the time is, what's the most important test? What's the most important scan to have, an MRI or a CAT scan, if you're worried about dementia? And I say, most cases don't need a scan, period. Some do. But neuropsych testing, which is a battery of tests that questions and answers, and that evaluates all the dimensions of cognitive function, is the definitive test to tell you, is there dementia, what type is it, and how far along is it? That's a neuropsychologist is worth their weight in gold when it comes to finding out about dementia. And often they come up with, just like Dr. Rubinell, it's not dementia. She's having some forgetfulness, but it's not dementia. It's mild cognitive impairment, which in most cases doesn't progress to dementia, but it accounts for some forgetfulness. So.
yeah, and it's normal to have, at my age, to get to the back of the house and be like, now what was it? Or
Well, did you ever see that Far Side? You remember the Far Side cartoons? There was a Far Side cartoon with a very elderly Superman, and he's in full leotards and cape, and he's up in the windowsill, kind of leaning out, and he turns around to his wife, who's in a rocking chair, and he says, "Now what was I going to do?"
yeah, that and forgetting the names of things. I cannot tell you how many times I just say the thing.
That's an opportunity to point out. That's the first thing people talk about, and that's the one thing that happens to everybody without progressing to dementia, is forgetting names. It's the same function that causes you not to remember the key word in a punchline in a story or something. Unfortunately, we're all, the people who worry the most about that come in and sure they have dementia is people who've never had any problem remembering names. Me, I won't even notice it.
My friends won't either. Yeah. My favorite thing, though, but I could not think of the word calendar. Could not, and it was frustrating me, and I just called it a time map, and I realized, you know what, that's actually a better word for it.
That's good.
All right. Oh, you had a question.
I was just curious about, I think I remember that you said you said a half a day a month you'll be here. Is that correct?
Dr. Kern will be here half a day a month. It is my understanding. We've cleared the way for that to happen.
Wednesday afternoon of every month.
Okay.
If he gets busier, he'll add days.
Well, what kind of interaction with other residents would we have with this person? Why would there be an appointment? Are there going to be appointments?
You can make an appointment through the internal medicine clinic. They actually requested his time, and they are managing his time. And
so his job when he is here is to see people?
It's to be a
make
psychiatrist over here.
But not to help with the diagnosis of dementia?
Well, he has more experience with it. I stay away from it because I have a lot of areas that I really keep up with, and that to me is a little bit to the side of what I do. I'm trying to be careful and not mismanage people. It's not unfamiliar to me, but it is not, as a generalist, it's just not something that I spend my time on.
For him, it would be included among the things he would check out.
I was just
Yeah, and then I
curious
would send
about-
you on. I'd be like, okay, I think we need to get another opinion here.
And perhaps it would be a way to refer someone to a neuropsychologist, in other words.
I think that could happen. The internal medicine folks are going to manage what they do at the clinic, and that's very clear to me. But I don't know what they've decided within that, and it may be that gets figured out as they see what people need.
Because we do know people that you wonder how to help. And maybe that's a place to start. I don't know. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And thinking about that, as much as I kid around about singing and stuff, a lot of times people do respond to music a lot more and can help with mood. And I just think of that with dementia and post-stroke, that it's been known for a while, but it just surprised me so much when people became aware of that. And with people that do have dementia or cognitive decline, one of the things when things get a little more severe that you can do to be helpful to them, not only orienting them and keeping them in their usual pattern and all of that, is to be aware of the mood you leave them with, because they may not remember the last thing you said, but if you've had a good time and you leave them happy, that's probably going to last a little longer. That's a little teeny tidbit. I know there's another
Told you
question.
he was a fun guy. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I always have questions. Technology. Okay, I'm old-fashioned or I'm something, but I find technology very stressful. And it creates fear for me, fear of where we're going. Can I cope with it? And it stresses me about as much as anything I can think of. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, I do know the song "I'm Old Fashioned" by Jerome Kern, and I could sing that. But actually, I mean, I think that it might be about technology, but it's really about an assault of new information. And as intuitive as the developers think they're being, I don't agree. I don't know what Dr. Wright's experience with our electronic health record is, but people are always like, you just go move your cursor to the whatever and pull it down. It's on the menu. And I'm like, okay. And then what's it called? Because none of that stuff is intuitive. So I have too much pride to just call a young person into my office. I have to at least try it. So far, I've not killed anybody or any document that I know of. But I think that, to me, my experience is probably a little different from yours, because I was around as they installed these things and made us start using them. So I had a lot more training and time to do things. And I'm still here looking at this, aspects of it being new. Today, I was trying to figure out, how do I get these labs that I ordered to go to a different lab? There is no field on here. I know that it says you can change that, but how? And I think it just, when you're in a moving vehicle, or you have an important letter that you want to send, or there's something that has some weight behind it, not being sure and feeling like you could ruin something is what we're dealing with. And I think it's common. I think that there's a lot of change. The pace of change, I can't give you an example, but I read this all the time. In my grandmother's lifetime, they went from horse-drawn carts to, being comfortable with cars, and in our time, goodness gracious, we went from, party lines to phones to cordless phones to phones in your pocket to all of a sudden you're carrying a computer and you're expected to know everything. It's like, I've got an answer right here. There's been an assault of new stuff, and some people like novel stuff, and a lot of us just could I just do it the way I did it yesterday?
Seems like young people just intuitively understand the way the system's set up. I sit down and nothing about it on that screen makes sense as cause effect. Someone has to show me, and they put my finger through it a few times, and then I get that pattern is what you do to get this done. But just an inherent understanding of why they connect that way You know, we're used to understanding why and seeing examples of it. This is all happening behind a screen and wirelessly, and
Yeah. Well, I have the answer for you. It's because the developer thought that's how it should work.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
So it was intuitive to the developer. I'm not really answering your question except to say you're in good company. And I think that figuring out, like for me, sometimes I'll sit down ahead of time and figure out how to use something. You know, PowerPoint was something I knew how to do, and I have to sit down. If I'm going to do it again, I have to really know what I'm doing so I don't screw up the presentation. And other things like that. So sometimes reducing my own anxiety by taking some time with it and familiarizing. There used to be those, This and That for Dummies books, and now you just have This and That for Dummies on YouTube. If you feel comfortable with it, you just find a YouTube that says, hey, here's how you do stuff, and some of them really aren't that good, but some of them can really be helpful, and sometimes the people that made something will tell you. I mean, for me, changing the cord in my weed whacker, I have to go online every time, and I'm like, now how do you do this? So the technology can be helpful too in some ways.
You've made me feel better about myself. I appreciate the response. I thought this was a topic that those of you who are really plugged in to life at this stage of life that we're in, see the importance of mental health. I see so much depression in my practice. And depression is almost as bad as dementia in some ways. It robs you of the ability to enjoy life. I tell people that I think of depression as robbing you of energy to enjoy life. So where's your quality of life if it's being totally dominated by depression? And yet it's a treatable thing. It's an epidemic thing, but it's a treatable thing, and I feel like a failure if we ever don't adequately address depression, because it dominates lives when it exists. You know that better than I do.
Well, and it's common. We live in not only a rapid changing culture, but people move a lot. Our previously established social connections aren't what they used to be, and so being isolated is a lot easier than it used to be.
Boy, this is a great place to move to, because what I learned a long time ago was a move at this stage of life, I don't care how positive it is, or if it's for all the right reasons, it's the wisest thing in the world, it's coming with stress, because everything about what orients you to life gets changed. It's turned upside down. You've got to find a new person for everything that you need service for. It's
And I'm looking
amazing.
forward to all the new plant varieties we'll have after climate change.
I enjoy living here at Butterfield Trail Village. I enjoy my friends. We communicate by talking, not texting on a phone.
Therapeutic.
Yes, and my children don't know what they're missing. Hey, Mom, how you doing? End of conversation. Or one or two more. We socialize with each other. We appreciate each other. We talk to each other and understand each other. This younger generation is going to be pitied one day because all they do is demonstrate. They're demonstrating, and I don't think they are truly understand what they're demonstrating about. It's just that they're angry because this isn't their way. You've got to learn to communicate with each other, and they've lost that ability by texting each other.
Well, but they are talking at the protest. They're not texting their protest.
I have a very short question to you. The question is for me, is that my problem or is it reality that people, especially the younger generation, speaks very fast, and I, out of that reason, understand only half of it what they say. That happened to me yesterday when this young doctor came there. I had to ask him 3 times, "What did you say?" Because they are speaking so tremendously fast. And you have the same situation on the telephones, right? You call somebody there, and then even now they have these automatic answers. And even these are, and then what was it? You didn't understand a single word. Is that my problem, or is it a reality? Have you other people have the same problem
Well,
with that?
it
But
can be
I
your
have
problem
it.
and reality.
That's such a good point. So you verify what I've been telling these residents. They haven't apparently been listening closely enough, but that don't talk louder, talk slower and more distinctly.
I have literally said to people, "I'm sorry, I can't hear that fast." And it takes them a second to understand what I said, but and I do work with some people who are, they're not young kids, but John Spallin, he can talk at a pretty quick clip.
Yeah.
And just some people have that pattern. And my problem is they're very funny, and I don't want to miss a single witty remark, so I have to get them slow down.
Well, thank you for your attention and for the warm welcome you've given Dr. Rubinow. I'm so pleased that mental health services, which have been lacking for decades, been just psychiatrists. I remember a time briefly when there was one psychiatrist in Northwest Arkansas.
That was when I was the one psychiatrist in Northeast Georgia. Really.
You could be treated for depression or suicidal ideation, but I'm so pleased that UAMS has taken this on as a recognition of need in the community. This is, as I say, we live in a very stressful society, and that was true before the pandemic, and it's only gotten more so since. I think we're preaching to the choir because these are the real informed people
Yeah.
here. But
Yeah.
you can tell from the questions.
It's okay, if you can feel like you are comfortable enough helping people to, be motivated to take care of themselves. That's sometimes the best thing we could do, not have an answer, but to let them know we care about them and that maybe you heard something that you thought could be helpful. And I do think that, speaking of the hearing issue, I have it too. I mean, it's a naturally occurring thing. Baldness isn't. That was unfair. But the hearing, the hearing is just something that happens as we age, and there's a pattern to it. The kind of hearing loss you have, blah blah blah. And I've got that classic. I'm in a restaurant, and I'm like, move your lips while you're talking at a pace I can follow, because it's really hard. But that's one of many losses that we have, that help us be a little less attuned to our environment. And hearing in particular, people tend to sit out, and then they're not part of things, and then they're more prone to depression, particularly the depression that is associated with the pseudo-dementia, because they're not getting input. So the point that you're making and advocating to hear what's going on is important, to hear or see or get out to, because some people have mobility issues as we age, all those kinds of things. They reduce our capacity to do the things that we know are good for us. So I'm taking your question and making it into something else, but thank you.
One last question.
Make it a good one.
Speaking fast, because I have that problem, and so often when I'm on the phone and someone says, I'll say, "I'm old. Speak slowly and loudly." So, but my question is it because I can't process as fast as I used to, that's part of the problem?
Well, it may be, but here when I'm calling somebody a lot of times and they're speaking fast, it's not a relative who's telling me a funny story. It's somebody who I've called and I'm trying to find out about what happened with my account, why there's a problem, and they're explaining it to me fast, and I'm like, wait, whoa, this is new to me. And so I think I mean, I don't know if it's true for you. I think it's a lot of times when we're really trying to understand. I am also a visual person. I can understand hearing, but I'm like, show me how that works, you know? And so I'm at a disadvantage even with hearing. So I don't know that you're slow at processing. I think sometimes you're just dealing with a lot of stuff at once, and you don't necessarily have the background they do, and they're starting from a place that you're just trying to catch up to. So I'll give you a pass.
I want to thank Dr. Rubinow for being here on short notice. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of y'all for showing up and participating as you usually do.